When we think about time travel and killer robots, one franchise immediately comes to mind: the Terminator. Everyone remembers Arnold Schwarzenegger in his leather jacket and sunglasses, or that bizarre liquid metal cyborg chasing down a car. It's unmistakable. But what a lot of people tend to forget is that this war against Skynet had a television chapter that was fantastic, yet criminally underrated. I'm talking, of course, about Terminator: The Sarah Connor Chronicles. Here things run much deeper. It's not just about running from relentless machines. It's about the psychological toll of raising the savior of humanity while he's just trying to get through high school, all while being protected by a teenage Terminator who doesn't understand a lick of sarcasm. The show is packed with tension, heavy moral dilemmas, and completely blurs the line between man and machine. The only problem? It delivered one of the biggest cliffhangers in television history and left us completely high and dry. That's why, today on the channel, Terminator: The Sarah Connor Chronicles, the true sequel to the movies that just ended way too soon. Sarah and John Connor live with a giant target on their backs. The apocalypse is always in their rearview mirror, and their routine basically consists of running, changing identities, and trying to force a normal life. But normal is a non-existent concept when your teenage son is destined to lead humanity in a war against machines. Their latest attempt takes place at a new school, where John crosses paths with Cameron. She just seems like a slightly eccentric girl, but the disguise soon drops. Cameron is actually a reprogrammed Terminator sent back from the future with a single mission: keep John alive. And the revelation couldn't be more timely. Danger soon knocks on the school doors, literally. A relentless cyborg named Cromarty invades the high school with heavy firepower. He enters the classroom shooting to kill, and showing that even killer robots try to have a sense of humor, delivers a deadpan "class dismissed" to the panicking students before zeroing in on his primary target. With no way out, Sarah, John, and Cameron have to resort to an extreme escape route. The trio breaks into a bank vault. They aren't after money, but a time machine hidden inside. The tension in the bank is off the charts. Cromarty uses sheer brute force to tear through the vault's thick metal door, step by step, while the three scramble to calibrate and activate the temporal device. It's a desperate race against the clock and the Terminator's steel fists. At the very last second, with the breach imminent, the machine activates. The energy beam transports the Connor family straight from 1999 to 2007. The catch is that a time jump of this magnitude doesn't go unnoticed. All the chaos at the school and the bank ends up falling into the lap of James Ellison, an FBI agent now tasked with the thankless job of investigating the carnage. Ellison is an everyday guy who suddenly finds himself facing the biggest, most insane puzzle of his life, oblivious to the fact that he just stumbled into a plot involving robots from the future. The time jump saved the Connors' skins, but the baggage came along for the ride. During the temporal displacement, part of Cromarty's body, including the cyborg's terrifying skull, is dragged into the future with them. On the streets of 2007 Los Angeles, a mangled Terminator dressed in homeless rags is already roaming around. The message is clear: no one is safe. Meanwhile, the new reality requires adaptation. John is bored and stuck at home waiting for fake IDs so he can go to school. Every runaway teenager's nightmare. Sarah and Cameron head out to sort out the logistics and try to contact a squad of human resistance fighters sent from the future. It sounded like a great plan until they reach the safe house and find all the soldiers dead. The slaughter is the handiwork of an enemy Terminator lying in wait. Cameron and the cyborg engage in a direct, head-to-head clash of indestructible endurance, turning the walls of the place into paper mache. The enemy ultimately escapes, but the real blow comes shortly after, in the form of a revelation. Sarah, frustrated about abandoning her original timeline, throws it in Cameron's face that she had 7 more years to train her son. That's when the Terminator employs her cold, surgical honesty. Sarah wouldn't have had 7 years. If they hadn't jumped through time, she would have died of cancer in 2005. The weight of discovering her own expiration date hits Sarah like a freight train. Needing to press on with the mission, they track down Enrique, an old ally, to get the new identities. He swears he's out of the game and passes the job to his nephew Carlos. The paperwork costs 20 grand, but Carlos lets a fatal detail slip. Enrique plans to turn Sarah over to the authorities to pocket a bounty. Cameron wastes no time and solves the problem by putting a bullet in Enrique. Sarah is furious. Cameron's robotic pragmatism, killing someone for what they were going to do, crosses a heavy moral line, but the machine is merely following the logic of survival. Ignoring orders to lay low, John decides to take a walk of his own. He Googles his own name. After all, 2007 tech is a fascinating novelty, and discovers the whereabouts of Charlie, Sarah's ex-fiancé. John breaks into the guy's house, comes face to face with him, tackles him to the ground, and runs off. The dust hasn't even settled, and the net is already closing in again. Enrique managed to leave a voicemail for FBI agent Ellison before dying. John just broadcasted that the family is in town, and Sarah, now haunted by her impending death, uses her new identity to visit a doctor to try and track down the cancer that was supposed to kill her.
And we can only hope that that will always be enough.
The fine line between surviving as a human and becoming as cold as the hunted machines starts to blur. Sarah dives into investigating Andy Good, an eccentric, programming-obsessed nerd who is developing a chess-playing artificial intelligence called the Turk. The dilemma is brutal. Andy's project has every potential to become the source code for Skynet, the system that will decimate humanity. Except, in the present, he's just a genuinely harmless guy. Sarah faces the decision of pulling the trigger on an innocent man to prevent billions of deaths in the future. It's a purely utilitarian calculation that demands Terminator-level coldness. Coldness that Cameron has in spades. At school, while trying to blend into the teenage environment, which results in her taking everything uncomfortably literally, the cyborg comes across a real crisis. A student is about to jump off the school roof. John's instincts scream louder, and he steps up to save the girl. It's proof of the empathy that will make him the great leader of the resistance. But Cameron physically stops him. To the machine, saving the girl means exposing John's identity and compromising the mission. John is disgusted. Cameron's cold-blooded attitude and Sarah's lethal paranoia make the boy explode. He throws it in their faces that they are trashing their humanity and acting exactly like the monsters they're trying to destroy. If they lose their souls in the process, winning the war is meaningless. While the Connor family grapples with the psychological toll of their choices, the physical threat gets a new face. Literally, Cromarty, who survived the time travel, is now roaming the city with his metal endoskeleton completely exposed. Since walking around LA looking like a chrome skull isn't exactly the ideal disguise, the cyborg kidnaps a top-tier scientist. The goal is macabre, forcing the expert to grow human skin tissue in a lab to cover the metal. The killing machine is rebuilding itself piece by piece, and as soon as it gets a new face, the hunt for John Connor will begin anew. John is sick of running. After spending his whole life looking over his shoulder, he finally decides to face things head-on, and Sarah is forced to slowly loosen the leash and let the kid become the leader the world needs. Meanwhile, the walls are closing in. Agent Ellison begins to put the pieces of the puzzle together. He investigates missing fingerprints and cases involving fake blood, and even ends up interrogating the guy Cromarty is about to use as a template to steal his identity shortly after. Across town, another Terminator is doing the legwork for Judgment Day, stealing an entire shipment of metal, but John and Sarah track down the truck, and this is where we see John's turning point. He doesn't run to hide anymore. Instead, he steals the key from a Terminator in sleep mode and goes toe-to-toe with the machine inside the truck. Of course, Cameron doesn't miss out on the party. True to her role as a bodyguard, she jumps into the fight and once again makes quick work of robots twice her size. Working together, they manage to steal the metal back, delaying the creation of more machines in the future. Ultimately, the dynamic between mother and son changes for good. John Connor is no longer just a target on the run. He's ready for war. The tension of living constantly hunted takes its toll, and the chessboard soon loses another piece. Andy, the mastermind behind the Turk program, is brutally murdered in the middle of an AI competition. As if the situation wasn't chaotic enough, Derek Reese arrives at the crime scene just in time to become the prime suspect. Sarah catches Derek's scent and goes after him, but the cops are faster. Before they can get on the same page, Derek is cuffed and thrown behind bars. For Agent Ellison, the pieces finally seem to be falling into place. He is tired of collecting synthetic blood samples at crime scenes and knows this rabbit hole goes deep. Ellison even tries to pull answers out of Derek in jail, showing he's ready to swallow whatever absurd truth the prisoner has to share. The problem is that Sarah has no patience for the justice system, and to her, family is the last line of defense. Convinced she needs to save her future brother-in-law, she orchestrates a highly risky jailbreak. But when the prison doors open, it isn't just angry cops waiting for them. A heavy-duty T-888, the same model that has been executing resistance agents, shows up ready to turn everyone into a statistic. From there on, the screen is pure adrenaline. The fight starts inside the van, tears through the vehicle's bodywork, and ends with a deafening chase atop a moving truck. In the midst of this hell, Cameron shines. Even remembering that Derek tried to dismantle her without a second thought in the past, she ignores the human resentment. Cold and lethal, the cyborg finds the perfect opening and rips the T-888's CPU chip straight from its base, deactivating the machine instantly. But saving the day doesn't help Cameron blend in. Navigating the high school hallways, her sense of detachment is worse than ever. She is a silent wall amidst hysterical teenagers. John also fumbles his social life. He tries to play the understanding hero for a classmate dealing with her sister's suicide, but gets the cold shoulder. To make his high school routine even worse, John picks up a bizarre friend with zero social awareness, who decides it's a great idea to blatantly flirt with the family's lethal cyborg. In the background of this mess, the relentless Cromarty is also making his moves. The Terminator shows up at Charlie Dixon's door, perfectly mimicking Agent Ellison's exact words and intonation. There is no direct violence, just a subtle heads up to reach out if you hear anything. It's purely tactical, spooking Charlie's wife and planting a seed of psychological terror that keeps everyone looking over their shoulders. The Connor household has turned into a makeshift ER, with Sarah's ex-fiancé Charlie fighting to save a man bleeding out on the kitchen table. That man is Derek Reese, John's uncle from the future. In the delirium of his pain, Derek recognizes Cameron and screams for John not to trust her, yelling that she is a lying machine. Meanwhile, Cameron, completely unfazed, prepares a sedative. Charlie, who is a paramedic, is shocked by Derek's war wounds and finally asks the question that has haunted him for years. "Sarah, where have you been?" The question thrusts us straight into the bleak future, where a younger Derek is with his brother, Kyle Reese. Yes, John's father. Kyle is already a legend among the soldiers and carries a worn-out photo of Sarah as a lucky charm. The piece is short-lived. They are sent on a mission and come face to face with Terminators transporting a massive, unidentified piece of Skynet technology. Before they can react, they are ambushed by hunter-killers, and a relentless T-888 captures Derek. Back in the present, Charlie confronts Sarah about the 8 years she was supposed to be dead. He confesses that he never believed the official story and moved to Los Angeles, hoping to find her. At the same time, John discovers that he and his newfound uncle share the same rare blood type. Backed into a corner, Sarah finally tells Charlie the whole truth. Kyle came from the future, Derek is his brother, and she had to fake her own death to protect John. In another flashback, we witness Derek's nightmare as a Skynet prisoner. He is locked up with other resistance fighters, including a man who confesses to being Andy Good, the creator of the supercomputer, the Turk. Panicking, Andy admits that he and others built Skynet. The T-888 begins torturing the prisoners to find out where John Connor is. Unable to bear the horror, one of the captives breaks and gives up the location. In the present, John saves his uncle's life with a blood transfusion. In the garage, Sarah's distrust of Cameron reaches a boiling point. She threatens to dismantle her and asks if the Terminator they destroyed is truly gone for good. Cameron reveals a crucial detail: its left hand is missing. The final scene shows Cameron herself, alone, secretly holding the severed metal hand. The danger isn't just out there, a piece of it is already inside their home. FBI agent James Ellison has fallen headfirst down the rabbit hole. His investigation into that mysterious metal hand left behind leads him straight to a very peculiar figure, Dr. Silberman. Remember him? The asylum psychiatrist who spent the entirety of Terminator 2 claiming Sarah Connor was clinically insane. The problem is that the good doctor's own sanity evaporated the moment he came face to face with an Austrian cyborg walking through security bars years ago. He finally realized that Judgment Day wasn't a delusion, it was a fact. The trauma turned Silberman into a dangerous fanatic. Completely paranoid, he kidnaps Ellison and begins running bizarre tests to figure out if the agent is flesh and blood or just another machine infiltrator. The level of madness is such that, in the psychiatrist's twisted mind, the only logical way to protect Sarah Connor is to lock Ellison in a room and set the place on fire. It is amidst this chaos that the real Sarah Connor shows up. The FBI paints her as a ruthless terrorist, but the reality is quite different. Instead of turning her back on the man who has spent the last few months hunting her family, Sarah runs into the flames and pulls Ellison out alive. This messes with the agent's head. First, because she obviously isn't dead. Second, because she risked her life for an enemy. Being a man of deep faith, Ellison survives the ordeal and begins to see things clearly. Sarah was right all along, and in a beautiful stroke of poetic justice, Silberman ends up strapped in a straitjacket, committed to the exact same clinic where he once psychologically tortured Sarah. Parallel to all this crossfire, Cameron starts showing that her programming is evolving in fascinating ways. She decides to take ballet classes. Seeing a killing machine practicing plies would be weird enough, but it goes further. When she witnesses a gangster threatening a woman on the street, Cameron steps in and defends her. She is learning to improvise, and more importantly, to replicate behavior that perfectly resembles human empathy. The scene is so surreal that even Derek Reese, a man who hates machines more than anyone alive, is caught off guard. Watching a Terminator act with what appears to be genuine compassion short-circuits the soldier's belief system, and he can't hold back his tears. It's proof that the lines between man and machine are starting to get very blurry. The war against Skynet changes shape when the Connors decide to break safety protocols and hack into the enemy's mind. They connect the recovered chip from the Terminator Vic into their own system to try and extract useful intel. It's a wildly high-stakes move. Cameron, loyal to her mission and devoid of fear, acts as the direct bridge. With John by her side overseeing the process, the cyborg dives into Vic's digital mind to find out what his master plan actually was. The truth would make any Cold War sleeper agent jealous. Vic was operating under the most human cover possible. He had gotten married. His wife had no idea she was sharing a bed with a killing machine. She was merely a means to an end because she worked directly on developing an AI system called Artie. At first, the project seems mundane, focused solely on managing urban traffic control, but that's the most terrifying part of the investigation. Skynet isn't necessarily going to be born from a brilliant military supercomputer. It could spring up anywhere. Any complex AI, whether monitoring traffic lights or processing weather data, has the potential to become the end of humanity, and Vic's memories confirm the darkest side of this logic. As soon as the project advanced and the wife outlived her usefulness, he murdered her in cold blood, discarding his own disguise. With their target set, Sarah and Derek set out on a sabotage mission to destroy the Artie system before it goes online, but the operation quickly goes off the rails. During the break-in, they are intercepted by two local cops. Without a second thought, Derek draws his weapon, ready to execute officers who are just doing their jobs. The brutal and unnecessary move makes Derek's mask slip. Sarah, who has always had her radar up for trouble, puts the missing pieces together. She realizes right then and there that her brother-in-law has been lying from the start. He was the one who murdered the programmer, Andy Good. The tension between them explodes. Sarah backs Derek into a corner and threatens him in no uncertain terms. She will not tolerate him acting like the machines they're trying to destroy. The value of human life is the only thing that separates them from the Terminators. While the family deals with broken trust and skeletons in the closet, the physical threat continues roaming the streets. Cromartie is still actively on the hunt. He shows up at John's school to try to track the boy down, and as usual, he doesn't leave without making his mark. The school principal tries to intervene and is brutally killed. The net is closing in, and the Connors realize they can't get comfortable anywhere for too long. Celebrating a birthday is normal for any teenager, but when you're John Connor and carry the weight of being the future savior of humanity on your shoulders, getting a cake with candles is the least of your problems. Even so, Sarah tries to bring a little normalcy to her son's life. She knows that as urgent as the mission to stop Skynet is, they can't forget to live in the moment. Otherwise, the war is already lost. To top off the day's mood, Derek decides to give his nephew a gift that's impossible to wrap. He takes John to a city park where two boys are playing baseball on the grass. They are the younger versions of Derek himself and his little brother, Kyle Reese, John's father. It's a quiet but absolutely devastating scene. They can't interact. They can only watch from afar. For John, who has spent his life hearing stories of a father who died before he was born, getting the chance to see him grow up, laugh, and play baseball is a reality check that connects him to his own past in a raw and powerful way. Peace, as always, lasts about as long as a single breath. The criminal Sarkisian, who previously crossed paths with the family and stole the supercomputer known as the Turk, aggressively forces his way into the picture. He discovers the Connors have trouble with the law and decides to use it as leverage. Sarkisian invades their routine, taking hostages in exchange for a multi-million-dollar ransom. He thinks he's dealing with an ordinary family hiding money, a severe strategic error when Terminators are involved. While the Connors deal with this absurd domestic setback, things spiral out of control on the FBI's end. Agent Ellison finally locates the apartment where Cromartie had been hiding. He assembles an elite task force and leads the raid armed to the teeth, believing he's about to arrest a dangerous psychopath. What happens next is a pure and absolute massacre. To the sound of Johnny Cash echoing through the hallways, Cromartie strolls through the shootout like he's taking a walk in the park. He annihilates the entire tactical team without wrinkling his suit. The bodies of the agents, decked out in Kevlar and heavy weaponry, are grotesquely discarded into the pool. It's a terrifying demonstration that humanity is a joke in direct combat against a T-888. On purpose, Cromartie leaves only Ellison breathing amidst the bloodbath, ensuring the agent takes the fall for the disastrous operation. When Charlie arrives at the scene and finds Ellison on his knees by the pool, it finally clicks for both of them. The game has changed. Sarah Connor isn't and never was crazy. Every word she said about the machine apocalypse was true. Back to the problem at hand, Cameron attempts to recover the Turk from Sarkisian, but upon tracking the package and opening the door of a suspicious vehicle, she triggers a lethal device. A massive bomb detonates, turning the car into a fireball and swallowing the Terminator before she could even react, leaving everyone's fate hanging by a thread. Tension is at an all-time high. Following an explosion that damages her chip, Cameron suffers a hard reset and reverts to her original factory programming. Terminate John Connor. The very cyborg who lived under their roof is now hunting them relentlessly. To the melancholic tune of Samson and Delilah, mother and son run for their lives, fleeing from the one who was supposed to be the family's shield. It's a brutal psychological nightmare. And as if outrunning an unstoppable Terminator weren't enough, Sarah and John end up cornered by Sarkisian. Left with no way out, they fight back with everything they have and kill the man in self-defense. It is the first time John has taken a human life. You can see the shift in his eyes the moment it happens. The weight of this trauma is hardening the boy, shaping him into the cold, calculated leader the resistance will need in the future. Amidst all this chaos, Uncle Derek is on edge, testing everyone's loyalty and demanding that Cameron be destroyed once and for all. When they finally manage to corner the cyborg, John pulls her chip. Cameron begs. She claims she is fixed and, in a bizarre display of emotional manipulation, says she loves John. Sarah, though ready to die for her son, steps back and lets John make the call. He hesitates, then shuts her down. But reality hits hard. There's simply no way they can survive this war without her. Swallowing his pride and fear, John plugs the chip back in. Meanwhile, FBI agent James Ellison is dealing with his own demons. Even terrified and knowing exactly how strong the monsters he's facing are, he refuses to cooperate when Cromartie shows up demanding information. Ellison chooses silence. Elsewhere in the city, we meet Catherine Weaver, the CEO of Zira Corporation. She is desperate to get her hands on the artificial intelligence known as the Turk. But Weaver isn't just a ruthless executive, she's a T-1001. Think of the liquid metal T-1000 from the second movie, but with a terrifying corporate upgrade. She is so lethal and cold that right after a business meeting, she murders a man simply because she despised him. Skynet now wears a suit and holds power in the boardroom. A resistance soldier travels back in time, bearing a tragic warning about a nuclear power plant. Skynet's plan is ingenious. If the plant suffers a meltdown and nearly destroys the city, the population will panic and beg for safety. The offered solution? Handing over total control of the infrastructure to automated artificial intelligence systems. To prevent the disaster, Sarah and Cameron infiltrate the plant disguised as employees. Sarah ends up befriending Greenway, a stressed out but good-hearted guy who works there. Unfortunately, the friendship is short-lived. A T-888 kills Greenway and assumes his identity to sabotage the plant from the inside. As if dealing with a killing machine weren't enough, Sarah also has to put up with Mr. Nelson, the most repulsive supervisor imaginable. The guy fakes a radiation leak alarm to force Sarah into a decontamination shower, crossing the line in the process. But karma works in mysterious ways. The T-888 disguised as Greenway crosses paths with Nelson and punches the supervisor right in the face. In rare moments like this, it's impossible not to root for the machine a little bit. While Sarah deals with corporate harassment, the fear of developing cancer, and the threat of a nuclear holocaust, John desperately tries to have a normal high school life. He starts dating a girl named Riley, but pretending to be an average teenager is damn near impossible when you have the recent murder of a man weighing on your conscience and the fate of humanity resting on your shoulders. The mission at the plant culminates in a heavy confrontation where Sarah and Cameron manage to destroy the T-888, preventing the reactor meltdown. They win the battle, but lose the corporate war. Catherine Weaver shows up at the site, taking the form of a man, and simply buys the entire facility, ensuring that future technology is integrated into the plant regardless.
And prevent a major disaster.
Trying to clear the board, Agent Ellison tracks down Charlie and his wife, warning them that they need to drop off the grid immediately if they want to keep breathing. Cromartie proves he isn't just a brute force machine, he knows how to play the psychological game. As Charlie and his wife Michelle try to flee the city, the Terminator intercepts them and kidnaps Michelle. He uses her as the perfect bait to lure Sarah and Derek, drawing their security detail away from his true target, John. The trap in the abandoned building is brilliant. Michelle is strapped to a device that appears to be a bomb, forcing Sarah and Derek into a race against the clock. Derek, with his sharpened combat instincts, sees through the trick and finds the real explosive hidden on another floor, but the damage is already done. The diversion leaves John completely unprotected out on the streets, trying to have a normal date with Riley, oblivious to the fact that Cameron is tracking his every move from the shadows. Cromartie advances on the boy, but John is no longer easy prey. He manages to outsmart the machine, luring the cyborg to the pier. In a final effort, Cromartie jumps into the water to catch him, forgetting one crucial detail: solid metal exoskeletons sink like an anchor. Far from there, Michelle's rescue devolves into absolute chaos. She sustains severe injuries during the escape. In a desperate rush to get her to a hospital, Sarah loses her temper and snaps at the Dixons, furious that this unforeseen pit stop is putting John's life at risk. It is a chilling glimpse into just how cold Sarah can become. Despite their struggle to keep her alive, Michelle doesn't make it and dies in Charlie's arms. The man is completely destroyed by grief and decides to leave, cutting all ties. John, displaying far more emotional maturity than any adult in the room, is the one who tries to comfort Charlie in his mourning, while Sarah grapples with the guilt of her own callousness. Meanwhile, Catherine Weaver continues to move her pieces across the board. She reaches out to Agent Ellison and offers him a job at her corporation. With an Oscar-worthy performance, she spins a sad, empathetic story about wanting to find those responsible for a plane crash she was connected to. A liquid metal machine manipulating an FBI agent with fake emotions. Skynet is playing chess, and humanity barely knows the rules. Cameron's mind suffers a total wipe. With no memory of who she is, where she came from, or what her primary mission is, she ends up wandering the streets and stopping at a halfway house. There, she crosses paths with Jody, a classic grifter who gets by on petty scams. Jody looks at Cameron's angelic, lost face and thinks she hit the jackpot, planning to use her as a scapegoat for her hustles. Little does she know that trying to con an amnesiac killer cyborg isn't exactly the smartest life insurance policy on the market. The tension of having a lethal machine ready to snap at any provocation is omnipresent. While Cameron deals with human scum, fragments of her database begin to reactivate as isolated memories, and we finally discover the origin of her face. It belonged to Allison Young, a real resistance soldier who lived in the future, and it's through this girl's perspective that the narrative drops a massive bombshell on us. The war is no longer just humans versus Skynet. There is a third faction operating in the shadows, a group of rogue artificial intelligences that do not serve Skynet, but don't fight for humanity either. They merely seek their own survival and freedom. It's the kind of plot twist worthy of an espionage thriller, vastly expanding the war's mythology. On the other side of town, Sarah Connor fights a much more mundane, yet equally intense battle. She steps up to the front lines to defend a woman named Casey, who is being pressured and abandoned by by an abusive husband. Sarah, with her typical takes no crap from anyone attitude, ensures the woman doesn't face this alone. In a surprisingly vulnerable moment, Sarah confesses to Casey that Kyle Reese's presence in her life during moments of crisis was just an illusion she created to endure the loneliness and trauma. It's a visceral exchange between two survivors who know that fairy tales don't exist. In the future, we see the exact moment the real Allison falls into the machine's hands. The interaction ends brutally. Cameron shows not a single ounce of hesitation as she eliminates the human girl whose features she has just stolen. It is an icy reminder that, no matter how docile Cameron might seem on the streets in the present, her moral compass is still made of pure titanium.
I hope you get to join Connor.
Amidst all this, John tries to act like the leader he was born to be, tracking and protecting Cameron. But he still stumbles badly due to typical teenage impulsiveness, making it clear that the mantle of humanity's savior is still far too big for him. The weight of the future never gives the Connor family a break, and the mission to keep the backbone of the resistance alive extracts a heavy toll. In the machine-ravaged future, we follow Kyle Reese and Derek risking absolutely everything to defend a civilian transport headed for the concentration camps. It is an act of idealistic heroism, led by Kyle, which triggers a domino effect that ultimately saves the life of Marty Bedell, a future crucial member of the rebellion who, coincidentally, also ensures John's survival. Since Skynet doesn't know how to handle defeat, it resorts to the classic trick of trying to erase the problem before it grows. The hunt travels back in time, and the target in the present becomes anyone named Marty Bedell. When the first name in the phone book is summarily eliminated, the Connor family realizes the urgency and splits into two fronts. Sarah takes on the rescue of the most vulnerable target, a child, while Derek and John rush to intercept the teenage version of the boy, who coincidentally is hyper-focused on training at a military boot camp. Sarah knows full well she isn't winning Mother of the Year. To keep little Bedell alive, she abruptly rips him away from his family, knowing the child is terrified and sees her as a threat. Sarah's internal conflict is stark. She is forced to play the villain in an innocent kid's mind, just to ensure he makes it to adulthood. There is no glory, only the burden of doing the dirty work no one else wants to take on. Meanwhile, at the boot camp, Derek and John infiltrate and stand guard in an environment that is pure paradise for kids who treat combat like a real-life game of Call of Duty. One of the cadets starts glorifying war tactics and dying in battle, prompting Derek to instantly kill the mood. With the cutting coldness of someone who has had to bury countless brothers in arms under metal rubble and fire, he delivers a brutal monologue about what it truly means to pull a trigger and watch the blood spill. The reality check shuts down the juvenile enthusiasm in a heartbeat. Inevitably, theory turns into practice when the T-888 dispatch for the mission shows up in a bureaucratic, relentless fashion to finish the job. Tension explodes, and the fight for survival requires John, Derek, and teenage Bedell himself to join forces. They manage to take down the machine and avoid tragedy, but there is no celebratory mood. When the dust settles and John processes the level of sacrifice people like Bedell will have to make in the future because of him, the boy's emotional armor finally cracks. He breaks down in frustration, suffocated by the helplessness of being locked into a destiny of loss from which he cannot escape. With the absurd amount of stress and near-death experiences the Connors have racked up, seeking therapy is no longer a luxury, it's a matter of basic survival. Skynet's targeting radar points to a new name, Dr. Sherman, a mild-mannered psychologist. What is supposed to be just a protocol mission ends up turning into the venting session John desperately needed. The boy is silently crumbling, trying to process a reality where his own mother crossed the red line and murdered someone, compounded by the absolute certainty that the same blood will soon stain his own hands. Dr. Sherman steps into the story as a neutral sounding board, listening to John's masked confessions without judgment, offering the future resistance leader a rare moment to just exhale and confront his own trauma. Speaking of emotional baggage ready to detonate, Derek gets a visit from someone he never imagined he'd have to deal with again. Jesse, his former resistance partner and lover, resurfaces out of nowhere, turning his reality upside down.
Hey, baby.
The dynamic between them is purely instinctive, rooted in running away from pain. Derek has completely closed himself off to human grief. He blocks out all feelings to avoid going insane from the constant losses, living only for the precision of the next firefight. But Jessie didn't cross time just to rekindle a teenage romance. She brings heavy intel from behind the scenes of the war. In the future, John's controversial decision to recruit and use reprogrammed Terminators is fracturing the resistance. Not every soldier trusts these allied machines, and a brewing atmosphere of betrayal and mutiny threatens to destabilize the human rebellion. Far from the guns and trenches, Catherine Weaver continues her bizarre, calculated quest to decipher human nature. Having assumed the identity of a powerful executive, she is now trying to raise the daughter the real Weaver left behind. Watching this tentacled artificial intelligence try to understand a simple childhood joke or deal with the girl's frustration is both fascinating and deeply uncomfortable. Her goal is clear: study emotions to create a perfect AI, but she stumbles day after day over the complexities of basic empathy. The machines loyal to Skynet, however, don't schedule appointments or deal in subtleties. A deadly new Terminator named Rosie is dispatched in cold blood to erase Dr. Sherman, but her path is intercepted by Cameron. The fight between the two cyborgs is an explosion of brutal efficiency. Cameron is visibly more lethal, effortlessly absorbing the enemy's combat style. But just as she gains the upper hand and John prepares to hack the prisoner's chip for crucial data, Rosie activates an unexpected protocol. The machine self-destructs instantly, turning her secrets to dust. The Terminators are learning fast and cutting down their margins of error, and the net around the Connors is drawing tighter by the minute. The pursuit shows no signs of stopping. Cromartie continues to hunt Cameron relentlessly, but Skynet decides to innovate its tactics and elevates the level of sabotage. The target is now Agent Ellison, and the method is brilliant. The artificial intelligence sends a Terminator from the future bearing the exact physical likeness of a man who already exists in the present. The goal? Commit a murder and ensure all the blame falls squarely in the FBI agent's lap, a move straight out of The Fugitive. Oddly enough, the one who pulls Ellison out of the crossfire is Catherine Weaver. She manipulates the entire situation, pulling rank as a high-level FBI executive to cover for the agent. Whether this is an act of kindness or just another piece moving on her psychological chessboard remains a mystery, but the woman knows how to operate in the shadows. Meanwhile, the Connors' home is broken into and robbed by a group of punks. Messing with the family that leads the human resistance is not a great career choice. Sarah, Derek, and Cameron immediately go into hunting mode to track down the intruders. And it's here that the divide between Sarah and Cameron becomes glaringly obvious. To the cyborg, the math is simple: kill any innocent who knows too much and might compromise the mission. It's frighteningly logical. Sarah, on the other hand, refuses to cross that line entirely and decides to leave one of the thieves alive. As you'd expect when leaving loose ends in a war against the machines, the decision extracts a heavy toll, as the survivor ends up running straight into Cromartie. Even secondary characters find themselves on a collision course. Jody, still trying to take advantage of the situation and seeking revenge against Cameron, threatens to call the cops on Cromartie. The Terminator simply tosses her out of the way like a bug on a windshield. But the real damage in the episode is internal. John is falling apart under the weight of his own conscience. The guilt of killing Sarkisian is eating the boy alive. He starts taking his frustration out on Sarah, accusing his mother of failing at her only job: protecting him. In his mind, Sarah should have prevented him from having to get his hands dirty. But the reality is that John's innocence is gone, and he has absolutely no idea how to deal with the darkness that has taken its place. The weight of destiny finally crushes John's patience, and he decides to simply drop off the grid. He takes Riley and runs off to the same small village in Mexico where he grew up.
I booked the honeymoon suite.
Wait, what?
The setting couldn't be more ironic. While the boy tries to escape the constant death that follows him, the entire town is in the midst of Day of the Dead celebrations. But taking a vacation from Skynet isn't an option. Cromartie tracks them down with his usual relentless efficiency. The Terminator raids their refuge and nearly eliminates Riley. It's the reality check John needed to understand that playing normal teenager only paints targets on the foreheads of the people he cares about. He realizes the leader of the resistance can't just pack his bags and run. run. The situation escalates to a cinematic level when the whole cavalry converges on Mexico. Sarah, Derek, Cameron, and surprisingly, Agent Ellison track the boy down. Ellison, who was previously a legal threat, is now fully integrated into the team, forging an unlikely alliance with Sarah to protect the prime target of this entire war. Everything culminates in an absolute showdown inside an old church. It's a sequence that feels straight out of a western, but with a lot more heavy metal flying around. The entire group has to unload everything they've got against Cromartie. The Terminator is a relentless tank, requiring their coordinated effort to even make him stagger. Cameron manages to inflict the critical damage that brings him down, but it's John who steps up and delivers the final blow, ending the machine that has made their lives a living hell for so long. Sarah watches it all unfold and finally gets the message. Her son is no longer the vulnerable little boy who needs to be hidden in the basement. He is making his own decisions, taking control of the situation, and she realizes her solitary strength isn't enough. They need everyone there if they want any chance of stopping Judgment Day. They win, but the silence that follows in the church is deafening. Sarah kneels down and violently smashes Cromartie's chip and electronic components. Around her, the group breathes a sigh of relief, but the emotional distance is clear. They are a team that just took down a monster, yet everyone standing there is completely alone with their own secrets and trauma. The temporal war gets even more twisted when Jesse captures Charles Fisher. The man is a traitor to humanity, a collaborator who, in the future, teaches the machines how to mimic human behavior, using prisoners like Jesse and Derek as test subjects. But the real gut punch is how Fisher became this monster. The older Fisher traveled from the future to the present with one sole objective: frame his younger self. He orchestrated his past self's arrest to ensure the boy would enter the penal system and go down the exact dark path Skynet needed him to. It's a predestined, sick cycle. Jesse executes the future version, but the damage is already done. To make matters worse, Derek has no memory of Fisher whatsoever, laying bare the fact that he and Jesse came from different timelines, carrying baggage and trauma that don't align. While the Resistance deals with paradoxes, John and Cameron have a much more tangible problem. Cromartie's body is missing. It doesn't take them long to track the disappearance back to Agent Ellison. The confrontation is brutal, and Cameron is perfectly willing to execute the agent for stealing the Terminator's remains. John intervenes, holding the cyborg back and displaying the mercy that defines him as a leader. Amidst this chaos, he notices something bizarre. Cameron reacts to physical sensations, an uncomfortable reminder that the line between machine and humanity in these units is much blurrier than he thought. But John doesn't know is that sparing Ellison doesn't solve the main problem. The agent may have good intentions, but he is being used as a glorified pawn by Catherine Weaver. She is the one who ends up with Cromartie's chassis, bringing advanced technology right into the heart of her corporation. The net closing in on all fronts is beginning to chip away at Sarah's sanity. She is being tortured by surreal nightmares, deserts with metallic cacti trapping John, and herself descending into what looks like a tomb. The pressure of carrying the fate of humanity forces her to seek real help. Dr. Sherman becomes her only safe haven, the only one willing to set boundaries with her and listen to what is destroying her mind. Every step they take to try and rewrite the future seems to only pave the exact road leading to the apocalypse. Everything is connected, and the clock won't stop ticking. Sarah remains obsessed with the three mysterious dots she can't get out of her head, and this clue leads her directly to a tech startup called Dakara Systems. To find out what's going on inside, she and Cameron adopt fake identities and infiltrate the place disguised as investors. The disguise works well enough for them to get close to the owners, Alex and Xander, a father and son duo. The dynamic between the two is complex. Xander is an absolute genius but completely disconnected from reality, operating on almost the same cold robotic wavelength as Cameron herself. Alex, on the other hand, carries the family's entire emotional weight. He wants to be successful at any cost and grapples with the ghosts of his family's past, having been placed in internment camps during World War II, even while his father fought for the Allies. This constant fear of failing his son and losing everything drives Alex to make the worst possible decision for a businessman. He decides to sell an advanced chip directly to the Yakuza, the kind of deal that never ends with a peaceful handshake. Far away from startups and the Japanese mob, Agent Ellison has an even more bizarre problem on his hands. He begins to question the artificial intelligence John Henry about the circumstances surrounding Dr. Sherman's death. During the interrogation, it dawns on Ellison, the machine does not comprehend right from wrong. wrong, operating with a complete lack of morality. Catherine Weaver's solution to this problem borders on madness. She installs the AI into Cromarty's deactivated body and assigns Ellison as the machine's teacher. His mission now is literally to teach ethics and human emotions to a robot wearing the chassis of the greatest killer they've ever faced. Basically, a version of Pinocchio, only made of liquid metal and possessing apocalyptic potential. On the human side, things aren't very logical either. John Connor continues acting like a teenager in crisis and gets involved with Riley again. What he doesn't realize is that the girl is a pawn on Jesse's board, being used to manipulate the boy and guide him toward a yet obscure objective, and current leadership isn't in top form. Sarah begins to crumble under the weight of her own visions. No one on the team seems to trust her anymore, and the suspicion only mounts when the investigation into the 3 dots reveals that the meaning behind the symbol involves names written in blood. The pressure of the end of the world is clearly coming to collect. The burden of time travel keeps catching up with the team, and sometimes it shows up in the oldest photos imaginable. Digging through archives, Cameron stumbles upon a record of a fire that destroyed a speakeasy back in the 1920s, right in the middle of the Prohibition era. In the center of the vintage picture, she spots a face that definitely doesn't belong to that decade, a T-888. This leads her on a nighttime investigation to find out what a Terminator was doing among mobsters and bootleggers almost a century ago. During her search, she meets Eric, the night shift worker at the library. Eric is a recent cancer survivor and is still grappling with the fragility of his own life. In a surprising move for a mission-driven machine, Cameron tries to build a friendship with him, but a cyborg's social skills are limited. Her brutal honesty, constantly reminding him of human mortality in a cold way, ends up creeping the guy out and driving him away. At least she tries to be nice in the end, leaving donuts for the next guy taking over the shift. The research reveals that the T-888, named Stark, wasn't sent to change Chicago's past. He just used the gangland era to establish himself and lay low, planning to wait patiently in the exact same spot for 90 years. His true objective is to assassinate the governor in the year 2010. Cameron tracks down Stark's location, and a physical confrontation becomes inevitable. She terminates the cyborg once and for all, and upon analyzing his notes, finally discovers what Sarah's 3 dots mean. They aren't a place or a logo, but a specific point in time based on an astrological alignment Stark was observing in the stars. While Cameron dismantles a nearly century-old conspiracy, John Connor falls into a trap straight out of a high school drama. Believing Riley is in danger at a party, he rushes to save her, his protective instincts in full overdrive. What he doesn't realize is that Riley orchestrated the whole chaos. She purposely steals the host's lighter just to start a fight and play the victim. The move is calculated. Push John to the edge, trigger the kid's PTSD, and make him let his guard down, all to squeeze valuable information about the future out of him. And he takes the bait.
So you did take the lighter.
I like shiny things.
While emotional traps take over John's present, the true horror of the war against Skynet unfolds in the future with a much quieter, deadlier approach. Direct combat is no longer enough. The story splits and moves forward on 3 fronts: the present, a 6-month time jump, and the future timeline, showing exactly how a single life can alter the course of everything. In the devastated future, the machines have resorted to biological warfare, engineering a brutal pathogen that is wiping out the resistance much faster than any robot army. Derek and Jesse are sent into the heart of the contaminated zone on a critical mission: locate a potential survivor who carries the cure for the disease. Back in the present, Sarah Connor is tasked with protecting the Fields family, who initially seem completely irrelevant to the end of the world. They are the picture-perfect image of domestic chaos. The mother, Anne, is having an affair behind her husband's back, who in turn tries to mask his own insecurities by belittling his wife. The one who actually grasps the gravity of the situation is the couple's daughter, Lauren. Instead of panicking, she hangs on to every piece of survival advice that comes out of Sarah's mouth. Lauren understands that the threat requires preparation and adopts a soldier's mindset. The true importance of the Fields is revealed 6 months down the line. Anne is pregnant with a girl named Sydney. The unborn child is exactly the immune survivor from the future, the answer to Skynet's virus that will save humanity. But the girl's fate exposes a deep wound in Derek. In the future, driven by his absolute fear of the machine, machines. He had the chance to use a Terminator to save Sydney's life and hesitated. His hatred for Skynet's tech nearly cost the survival of his own species. Protecting the fields from a T-888's attacks, with Cameron fully focused on kicking ass and securing the perimeter, Sarah lets slip just how damaged her mind has become. She coldly reflects that proximity does not equal love. It's a raw analysis that perfectly sums up the relationship between her, John, and Derek. They aren't bound by normal ties, but by the shared trauma of a world on fire. Still, even amidst the paranoia and constant terror, there is a brief glimmer of hope. Jesse reveals that, in the future, humans in Australia have finally managed to grow food again. The Earth isn't completely dead, proving there's still something worth fighting for. Sarah is diving headfirst into conspiracy territory. She starts tracking a UFO convention blogger who posted pictures of spaceships. The detail that catches her eye, the ships bear that same three-dot symbol she keeps seeing everywhere. The catch is that this blogger becomes a target, and Sarah's obsession pushes her further into isolation. She is so paranoid that even the tinfoil hat crowd seems well adjusted next to her. While his mother loses her mind over theories, John deals with much more pressing issues. He is growing increasingly stubborn and closed off, and things with Riley reach a breaking point. And here, the show finally shows its hand. Riley isn't just a confused, ordinary American teen. She is a refugee from the post-apocalyptic future, brought back by Jesse with one single purpose: to be the perfect distraction to drive a wedge between John and Cameron. But the weight of this mission is crushing. Riley is exhausted from lying to John, terrified of Cameron's analytical stares, and gets absolutely zero emotional support from Jesse. The pressure is so overwhelming that the girl attempts to take her own life. On the flip side, Jessie shows no remorse whatsoever. In her mind, the ends justify the means. She came from a nightmare and is terrified of a future where humans and machines might find common ground, so she'll do whatever it takes to stop John from trusting his metal bodyguard. Far away from this teenage tension, we have an almost absurd scenario: Agent Ellison trying to give morality lessons to John Henry, a lethal artificial intelligence. He throws out the argument that God created people as sacred, trying to instill the concept of empathy into the machine. John Henry processes the information but questions the logic behind it. Basically, Ellison is trying to teach ethics to a supercomputer using Sunday school sermons. What could possibly go wrong? With a bullet hole in her body and time running out, Sarah flees a hospital and makes a drastic decision. She kidnaps Dr. Burnett to force her into treating the wound in secret. Sarah activates her survival mode and spins a story about an abusive husband who shot her. It's a calculated lie, of course. After all, saying you were shot by a killer cyborg sent from the future doesn't usually get you great medical care at triage. During her blood loss delirium, Sarah begins hallucinating about Kyle Reese. He isn't just a ghost from the past haunting her. He's the manifestation of her own survival instinct. Kyle acts as a tactical guide in Sarah's mind, pushing her to keep fighting and reminding her that she can't just give up on their son. But the irony of Sarah's lie soon takes its toll. She used the excuse of a violent husband without knowing that Dr. Burnett actually lives that nightmare at home. Enter Alvin, the doctor's husband, who happens to be a cop with a brutal temper. He figures out what's going on and starts hunting the two women down. Suddenly, the immediate threat isn't a cold programmed machine, but a very real human monster flashing a badge. The tension reaches its peak until Derek Reese manages to track the location and intervene, saving Sarah and the doctor before the situation completely spirals out of control. While human chaos unfolds, the machines have their own revelations. John Henry, processing information like a highly suspicious, gifted child, realizes a crucial detail about Catherine Weaver. He notices the lies. The AI connects the dots and figures out that the ruthless executive is, in fact, a robot. Weaver remains absurdly efficient and dangerous, operating on a level that makes the original T-1000 look like a baseline model. Now that John Henry knows the truth, it remains to be seen whether he'll accept being just another cog in her grand design. The dust from the latest missions has barely settled, and the team is already investigating a tense massacre at a facility linked to ZeraCorp, Catherine Weaver's company. The whole investigation unfolds with the heavy backdrop of a funeral and a wake for the victims. And remember that UFO story and the three dots that were keeping Sarah up at night? The mystery finally clicks, and in a much worse way. There's There's nothing alien about it. The ship is actually a prototype for an aerial military drone, the exact drone model that, in the future, will blanket the skies, gunning down the human resistance and dropping Terminators onto the battlefield. The apocalypse is literally in its beta testing phase. Amidst the collective grief, the team tries to gather intel. Sarah ends up face to face with the widow of a man she killed herself. It's one of those situations where survival takes a psychological toll. Sarah has to look the woman in the eye, hide the truth, and play the sympathetic ear. She knows that sometimes maintaining the illusion is the only thing keeping people from falling apart. At the same time, John connects with the daughter of another facility employee. The catch is that the girl's father isn't dead. He faked his own death and actually works as a hitman for Zeracorp. It's a brutal realization for the team that Skynet isn't just a threat on the horizon, it's already here, wearing a suit and operating smoothly in the corporate shadows. In the upper echelons of that very same corporation, Ellison continues his personal pet project of trying to humanize machines. He pushes Catherine Weaver to bond with her adopted daughter on the anniversary of her husband's death. The macabre detail Ellison ignores is that Weaver was directly responsible for killing the girl's real mother. Even so, the machine tries. It's a bizarre, calculated effort, but one that shows the T-1001 attempting to simulate human connections, proving that the pieces on Skynet's board are far more complex than just metal and code.
Come. Sit on my lap.
Here, reality bends in true Inception style, but with the claustrophobic weight that only Sarah Connor's life can carry. Everything revolves around a ghost from the recent past. Remember Winston, the guy Sarah was absolutely certain she had sent to the other side? Well, he's very much alive and has achieved the seemingly impossible. He captured the legend herself. Now, Sarah is trapped in the back of a truck, and Winston has a very clear goal. He wants her to break, pick up a phone, call John, and hand the boy over to Skynet on a silver platter. The interesting detail is that Winston isn't some cartoonish, scenery-chewing villain. He carries an enormous burden. The guy deeply regrets the deaths he's caused, and knows he has blood on his hands, but he feels he's in too deep with the machines to have any other choice. It's kill or be killed, and he chose to live. To break Sarah's iron will, he doesn't just use physical violence. He drugs her, forcing her mind to plunge into a deep, dangerous delirium. Suddenly, Sarah wakes up in a sleep therapy clinic. It's an environment designed to give her traumatized mind exactly what it begs for the most: peace. Inside this illusion, we see the gears turning in her head. The clinic exposes her deepest insecurities and desires. The facade of absolute control she maintains in the real world crumbles in there. The greatest seduction of the delirium isn't the comfort of the mattress, but the soothing idea that John is finally safe, that she no longer has to sleep with a gun under her pillow, that she can just stop running. It's a psychological siren song. Guided at times by visions of a coyote, she navigates this mental maze while her real body bounces around in Winston's metal prison. The tension doesn't drop for a second because the risk is twofold. If she surrenders to the relief of the dream, Winston wins and Skynet gets John. She has to fight her own exhaustion, shatter the fake therapy, and focus on the pain of reality to try and escape the truck. It's Sarah Connor at her core. Broken, exhausted, but absolutely incapable of giving up. While Sarah deals with her own literal and mental prisons, desperately trying to regain some sense of stability and realizing just how far off her own son's radar she is, the tension in John's inner circle reaches a breaking point. The pieces on the board are moving fast, and everyone's patience is hanging by a thread. For starters, the resident cyborg is being creepy again. Cameron starts glitching, that old system flaw that would leave any normal person sleeping with one eye open. But John isn't a normal person. Instead of pulling away, he takes on the task of fixing her himself. The scene highlights just how much their dynamic has changed. There is a mutual trust and vulnerability there that defies logic. Cameron, surprisingly empathetic for a robot, understands John's feelings for Riley and backs off, deciding not to interfere in their relationship. But Riley is miles away from any sense of calm. The girl is wasting away in paranoia, absolutely terrified by the idea that the Terminator has already figured out her secret. And that's when Jesse's true macabre plan is finally laid out on the table. The former soldier from the future didn't just want to get the little girlfriend out of the way. Jesse's strategy was to manipulate every step of Riley's life to force a confrontation with Cameron, hoping the cyborg would lose control and kill the girl. The ultimate goal? To make John witness the bloodbath, develop a deadly hatred for the machines, and stop trusting reprogrammed AIs once and for all. It's cruel chess, and Riley was just a disposable pawn. When Riley finally discovers the truth and realizes her entire recent life was an orchestrated lie, she snaps. She goes after Jesse with everything she has. It's a physical, desperate, and ugly fight. Amidst the chaos, struggling to defend herself against the fury of the girl she manipulated, Jessie accidentally kills Riley. The girl's death wasn't calculated to be by her own hands, and this completely breaks Jessie. And how does John react to this whirlwind? With a spine-chilling detachment. He could have spoken up. He could have intervened much earlier, but he chose silence. He let the people around him make their own decisions, even if they were walking straight off a cliff. That vulnerable teenager is being left behind, and the cold, solitary, calculating leader of the resistance is starting to take over. Riley's blood has barely cooled, and the toll of all the lies hits everyone like a ton of bricks. To understand the absurd level of paranoia that brought us here, the narrative throws us back to the devastated future. Dissecting Jessie's trauma, we discover that her sickening distrust of machines didn't just come out of nowhere. In the future, Jessie led a highly classified mission to intercept a cargo on an oil rig and deliver it to John Connor. The catch? The entire operation was managed by a machine that supposedly worked for the resistance. It's the kind of alliance that leaves any soldier with an itchy trigger finger. Tension aboard the submarine boiled over. The crew couldn't handle the paranoia and mutinied, opening the cargo ahead of time. They didn't find weapons or supplies, but a T-1001, the liquid metal Terminator, now cornered by human paranoia, killed one of the crew members in pure and simple self-defense. Before leaving, the T-1001 looked at Jessie and delivered a clear message. There would be no more alliance with that faction of machines. It was on that exact day, on that cold rig, that any drop of trust Jessie had in metal evaporated forever. Back in the present, the dust from these revelations starts to choke them. The truth about who was really pulling the strings and caused Riley's death comes to light. Initially, Sarah Connor goes into survival mode and points every gun she has at Cameron, convinced that the cyborg finally blew her circuits and killed the girl. But to the matriarch's shock, Cameron proves her innocence and reaffirms her commitment to John, further cementing the strange trust between the two. Jessie's world, on the other hand, completely collapses. The tragedy mercilessly piles up when she suffers a miscarriage, losing the baby she was expecting. And if you think she would find any comfort in Derek's arms, forget it. The guy sinks into a state of paranoia so brutal and hypocritical that he refuses to listen to any explanation. Not only does he turn his back on the woman he supposedly loved, but he leaves her fate hanging in a lethal ambiguity, suggesting he'd be perfectly capable of pulling the trigger on her himself. Derek proves to be a far cry from the idealistic hero Kyle Reese always was. Amidst the rubble of this dysfunctional family, John accepts the burden. Without trying to fix the unfixable, he watches the humans around him destroy themselves with lies and betrayals. He's no longer the boy who needs saving. He's the leader who realizes that, ironically, the only companion he can truly trust doesn't breathe. The real Skynet has decided to stop playing games and bare its fangs. It becomes clear that it isn't Catherine Weaver's organization leaving a trail of bodies in its wake, but the original artificial intelligence, which has zero qualms about using humans as disposable pawns. The main target of this new attack? John Henry. The AI that Weaver has been shaping suffers a brutal hack, forcing the team to desperately pull the plug. It's in the midst of this digital chaos that we discover Skynet is essentially a brother to John Henry, built from the same source code, trying to forcefully seize control of him. While the machine war wages on the servers, the old guard needs to fall in line in the real world. Sarah, John, Derek, and Cameron try to work as a team, which would be comical if it weren't so tragic, considering their trust in each other was pulverized a long time ago. In a desperate attempt to find a safe haven and maybe an ounce of normalcy, Sarah takes John to Charlie Dixon. Charlie proves, once and for all, that he is the most decent guy in this whole story. He takes John in, stepping into the father figure role the kid has always craved, and even manages to resolve his emotional baggage with Sarah. It's a moment of peace so genuine that for anyone familiar with the franchise's rules, it already sounds like a death sentence. And unfortunately, the script comes to collect. When Skynet's forces finally storm the place, Charlie sacrifices himself to protect everyone. His death isn't just brutal, it strips John of the absolute last shred of a civilian family he could ever have. In the middle of this firefight, a curious dynamic takes center stage. Derek and Cameron, who would gladly run each other over with a truck if they could, end up watching each other's backs. Cameron even saves Derek's skin, proving that, at the end of the day, the need to survive and a common enemy speak louder than any personal feud. For Sarah, the fight is becoming increasingly internal. She carries the weight of Charlie's sacrifice while battling the looming ghost of cancer, a suspicion fueled after she removed a Skynet wire from her own body during a previous kidnapping. Her attempt to outrun fate ended up costing way too much. Away from the bullets, Weaver, Ellison, and a freshly rebooted John Henry begin working together to track down and understand this mysterious brother. Unlike the standard killer machines, John Henry proves to be just a curious and innocent intelligence, a blank slate. The big question is who will shape his future first, Ellison's moral lessons, or Skynet's cold-blooded calculations. Skynet has decided that hunting Sarah and John isn't enough. Now they have Savannah, Catherine Weaver's daughter, in their crosshairs. The little girl pops up on the radar of a ruthless T-888, but ends up being saved by John Connor's team at the very last second. However, in a war, rescues never come for free. During the direct confrontation with the machine, Derek Reese is killed. It's a brutal gut punch. One of the Resistance's most loyal and paranoid soldiers goes down, and the most terrifying part is John's reaction. He barely feels the blow. The kid has seen so many people die for him that the loss of his own uncle hardly scratches the emotional armor he's had to build just to keep functioning. With Savannah safe, the focus shifts to figuring out why a child is on Skynet's termination list. Weaver and Ellison go on a hunt to get the girl back, especially since Savannah is crucial to John Henry's evolution. The friendship between the human child and the AI is literally the anchor stopping John Henry from turning into the next global exterminator. He genuinely likes her, as much as a computer can like anything, and will do whatever it takes to protect her. But the situation spirals out of control when Ellison and Weaver start forcing John Henry to keep secrets from each other. It's the classic human mistake, teaching a machine how to lie. Sarah, true to her controlling nature, puts her foot down and claims she's the only one capable of keeping Savannah alive. But Ellison acts as the voice of reason and convinces her that Catherine has the right to take care of her own daughter, appealing straight to Sarah's maternal instinct. The problem with striking a deal with a CEO made of liquid metal is that you always lose. Weaver sets up an ambush in coordination with the FBI, ensuring Savannah comes home, while Sarah walks straight into the trap, ending up handcuffed and behind bars once again. Ellison did try to find a middle ground, but Weaver's orchestrated betrayal shows that she's playing on a much larger board, where the ends justify any means. She firmly believes that John Henry and Savannah are the key pieces to saving the world. While everything falls apart, Cameron keeps up her routine of intimidating humans and cornering Ellison, making it clear she strongly suspects Sarah's time is running out due to the cancer. The walls are closing in from all sides. With Sarah behind bars, Derek in the morgue, and John growing increasingly apathetic, the present-day Resistance has never been so vulnerable. The board is finally set for the final showdown, but alliances shift so fast, it's hard to keep track. With the threat of Skynet knocking at the door, Catherine Weaver realizes she can't play solo anymore. She extends a direct invitation to John and Cameron. Join forces with me, let's destroy the rival intelligence, and as a bonus, we'll rescue Sarah. Of course, trusting a T-1001 is basically like hugging a cactus, but their survival options have run out. Things fly off the rails quickly when Weaver's facility suffers a frontal assault orchestrated by a Skynet drone. The CEO doesn't even try to hide who she is anymore, using her liquid metal skin to neutralize the threat in a way that would make any Terminator proud. The chaos, however, demands immediate sacrifices.
Get down.
John Henry, desperately needing to activate the time machine to flee to the future and confront his brother, convinces Cameron to give him her own chip. It's a heavy moment. Cameron, who spent the entire series protecting John with relentless precision, chooses to shut herself down for the sake of a larger strategy. Without his pet bodyguard and driven by the loss, John makes the most drastic decision of his life. He and Weaver step into the time machine to follow John Henry and take the fight straight to the future. Meanwhile, Ellison, who has already served as the middleman between every possible faction, delivers Weaver's final message to Sarah but decides the future isn't his problem. He chooses to stay in the present to try and clean up the current mess. Sarah, grappling with the harsh reality of her own mortality and the constant dread that the cancer will take her out before the machines do, also decides to stay by Ellison's side. She's not going to run. If Skynet wants a war in the present, she'll give them a war in the present. The real mind-bending twist happens when John and Weaver land in the post-apocalyptic future. Everything John has spent his life preparing to face is right there. The ashes, the wreckage, the human resistance fighting for scraps. The initial shock comes when he runs into Allison, the young soldier whose face served as the template for his cyborg protector. And right after that, he comes face to face with none other than Kyle Reese, the very father he would one day send back in time. The setup would be perfect, if not for a brutal twist that throws the protagonist's entire legacy in the trash. No one in that camp has the faintest idea who John Connor is. The great legend, the savior of humanity, is just a nobody in the middle of the end of the world. An absolute cliffhanger that changes all the rules of the game and proves that time travel is easy. The really hard part is surviving the show's cancellation.